These are faces identified in the collection of the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam using face recognition software by an app designed for the Apps for the Netherlands contest, supporting the use of cultural open data. The app is no longer available, but the story is captured in the Internet Archive.
Hi, welcome. I am Trilce Navarrete, and in this video we will look at the addictive side of museums. Why do people like visiting museums? And can we measure how much do they like a given visit? Calculating taste is not easy because it very much depends on the individual's experience. Empirical evidence has shown a few general patterns. For instance, it will be expected that the number of museum visitors depends on the admission fee, since people only have a certain percentage of income available to spend on leisure activities. It appears that there is a type of people who visit museums, which does not change much when prices drop or even if the price were to rise. In economics, that is known as low price elasticity of demand, which is characteristic of goods that have few substitutes and are associated with leisure or with luxury. That means that museums have a considerable fan base, particularly art museums, who might care less about price changes than visitors of zoos and science museums. Such apparent loyalty for art museums might have to do with the availability and price of alternative or substitute goods. We know that a high-quality exhibit, such as a superstar temporary exhibition, is not comparable to a permanent exhibition of a less-known museum. If you have not seen the video where we talk about superstars and tourism, please take a look. Zoos and science museums in that respect appear to compete with many other leisure activities, while consumers of art museums might have developed a stronger brand loyalty. Consumers receiving a discounted ticket might also be more sensitive to price changes, so that a change in price can be expected to lead to a proportionate change in number of visitors. You can imagine students will fall into this category. Something to consider is the opportunity cost and the habit to visit museums. We all know that it is much easier to visit museums during a holiday than on a regular basis. This is because when we are on holidays, we tend to package all the costs related to a museum visit in the holiday budget and are less sensitive to the time investment due to long queues or to the high-priced lunch available. Visiting the museum is in fact part of the whole holiday. For the local residents, ease of access is an important determinant for a visit. Visitor numbers increase across population segments when accessibility is improved, including public transportation in urban centers. One thing that remains a sort of a black box for researchers, key to demand, is individual preference. Preference is personal, and it is extremely sensitive to individual experience. People who have visited museums are more likely to visit again and to gain greater enjoyment. The opposite is of course true. A negative experience will lead to reduced prospect of going back. The likelihood of having visited a museum is linked to family and social context. Generally, individuals with greater years of education visit museums more often, and certainly so if their parents have higher education levels. A visitor will gain greater satisfaction if she has had earlier exposure through past visits, but also through related education in the given topics such as art, history, science, mechanics, or whatever the subject of the exhibition might be. Greater understanding during the experience yields greater satisfaction. This is because museum services are an experience good, complex and heterogeneous, difficult to assess beforehand. Consumers will then seek information signals of quality, which can include popularity, pricing reviews, or word of mouth. In fact, social media is transforming recommendation mechanisms as well as cultural consumption practices. What about the digital consumption? Very little is known about digital museum consumption, partially because of the missing official definition of a digital museum, and partially because few museums have fully adopted the new medium to reach audiences. So far, visitors to museum websites appear to have a very similar profile than those of museum buildings. And what about museums' services beyond their websites? After all, the web has no walls. Unfortunately, it seems that few museums are exploring the web beyond their own constructed spaces. But also, visitors might not know of all the wonderful things museums can offer. How would you accidentally find a museum when browsing online? Imagine we start a browsing session on the World Wide Web. We find a city where we can walk through remotely to eventually look inside of a building that happens to be a museum. A visitor might walk around and a fascinating painting to further look at, zooming into to see the details of every corner. A hyperlink away leads to the story of a painting and further information to keep a curious digital tourist busy for a while. Digital consumers might not only seek leisure, but might be involved in a specific research project, for instance, to study portraits to determine facial characteristics and reconstruct an individual's voice, or inbreeding based on genetic combination visible in the jaws of the family. So far, researchers appear to be the greatest benefactors of all the digitization projects. Consumers might also seek books related to the collection in the museum, or perhaps gifts. In fact, most museums aim to attract a broad audience for their multiple services, and digital technology can facilitate this, particularly for accidental encounters of museum content outside of a museum environment. An emerging association with new forms of consumption that lead to new products and services can be found in the cultural and creative industries, which might use collections available online to illustrate a television show or inspiration for developing new products. Evidence is still lacking on the eventual taste formation effect of digital consumption, but based on past experience, we can assume that consumers will benefit from available information to inform their future choices. This is even more relevant for individuals unable to travel due to lack of resources, physical or social impediments, lack of previous museum experience, or simply the wish to lower their environmental footprint. It would be easy to imagine that a positive museum visit online could lead to new museum fans. This was the video on museums and their visitors. You now know why you might be addicted to museums. Thank you for watching. A list of references relevant to this topic are available at the end of this video.